Everyone knows what it's like to be afraid of a snarling dog, or maybe a serial killer, even a werewolf or a vampire. But have you ever been afraid of the universe itself? Have you ever thought that the cosmos itself was a nefarious and dangerous place, not built for your comfort or your advantage? That's cosmic horror. And one of the great masters of cosmic horror is H.P. Lovecraft. We like to think ordinarily that God is in his heaven and that the universe is structured so that good people will sort of be rewarded and bad people will be punished. That's sort of the general assumption or presupposition of a rational universe or a moral universe. And yet, what if all of those expectations are wrong and the universe is a nihilistic, bleak, and absurd place? That's a totally different kind of horror, and that really emerged only in the 20th century. And so today we're going to talk about cosmic horror, and in particular H.P. Lovecraft. All right, welcome to Monsterology. Here's the first image that we're going to be doing, and it's a portrait of H.P. Lovecraft. And then the second one, I tried to actually draw something that had cosmic fear or cosmic horror, kind of a Cthulhu-type creature haunting this city. So I'm going to show you how we did both these images and how you might be able to tackle this kind of project yourself. I taped off everything with a blue tape so that I could make a mess on it, and then we get a nice clean frame. I'm basically laying this in with a pencil sketch of his face. I'm just looking at a reference image. You'll see what happens here is kind of it was kind of disturbing for me, because when I roll over it with acrylic paint, which is a wonderful effect usually if you're using the right ingredients, but you'll see that I actually destroy the drawing. And so I was in this panic mode once I rolled over it with the ink. And I guess the lesson here, if you're an artist, is be prepared for failure and all kinds of unexpected problems to occur. You just have to persevere and keep going. And what I did is I ended up rescuing a little bit, enough of the drawing so that I could see where his head was. And then you'll see me sort of have to redraw. So here I am actually losing the drawing altogether. I was fairly furious with myself here. And I'm trying to dig it back out again, but it's too late because the paper just sucks up the paint very quickly. And so the result, though, is a really wonderful sort of effect where, as I draw back into it with colored pencils and chalk and charcoal, I start to get his face emerging out of the dark shadows, which I thought was really apropos, given that he's really the great horror writer of the 20th century. Many people think he really is the after Edgar Allan Poe, he's the next great or the greatest horror writer of the 20th century. And he was born in Rhode Island, lived most of his life, I think all of his life, in New England. In 1913, he started writing for pulp magazines. And he was basically unknown and died sort of penniless and obscure in his 40s, when he was 46. But now he's basically considered this great genius. And he wrote some very famous pieces now, like The Call of the Cthulhu. I think many people are aware of this story of a giant squid-like creature influenced by the stories of the Kraken and so forth. He was very influenced by his understanding of science. He was quite scientifically literate. He was a huge fan of astronomy and even wrote some astronomy for local newspapers. But he also knew his biology, he knew his geology and physics, and it was a scientific understanding of the world that led him to sort of a kind of view of the world as being intrinsically meaningless, that there was no God to make everything and design everything beautifully. Instead, it was a cold universe of, atoms in the void, and the best we could do is make sense of it ourselves. That was essentially his view. He said he was officially an agnostic, but a sort of practically an atheist. And as a result of that, many of his books have sort of a pre-Christian, almost a pre-monotheistic view. You might even say that it was a kind of 20th century paganism. And he thought, that aliens,
In several of his books, he suggested that aliens would be sort of the creators of human beings, and then human beings were like slaves to them, and humans mistook them for gods, but they were really just other superior beings. And this was the kind of thing he liked to play with a lot. He had a big influence on other writers like Jorge Luis Borges, Clive Barker, Stephen King, Neil Gaiman, and he's had a big influence on a lot of films, including, of course, the Alien series, and some people have suggested The Mist and so forth. In the drawing that you see me working on here, I've tried to do kind of a Cthulhu-like creature where it's so vast and huge that it's completely overwhelming, the city, and these people are in a state of, utter disbelief and angst. In The Call of Cthulhu, Lovecraft describes a giant sea monster sleeping at the bottom of the ocean until it accidentally awakens, and it's awakened by foolish human beings. So there's allusions to the Leviathan and of the Bible, and the Kraken, which was a ship-smashing giant octopus or squid that northern sailors feared, from the 17th century and so forth. But he was a master of giving this sort of blood-curdling monsters. But more importantly, in 1927, he wrote Supernatural Horror in Literature. This was an article in which he argued that good horror evokes a unique subjective emotion, and he refers to this as cosmic fear. There's something in the horror experience, he claimed, that resonates with the deep instinctual awe of the unknown. To quote him, he says, "The one test of the really weird is simply this: whether or not there be excited in the reader a profound sense of dread and of contact with unknown spheres and powers, a subtle attitude of awed listening, as if for the beating of black wings or the scratching of outside shapes on the known universe's utmost rim." End quote. Lovecraft suggests that all human beings have an instinctual awareness of the paltry state of human understanding, especially when compared with the almost limitless domain of the strange and unfamiliar. And that sense of fragility and vulnerability is a major aspect of the cosmic fear, the cosmic horror. And it's no accident that this emerges at the same time as existentialism. When Lovecraft is writing this about cosmic fear, Martin Heidegger in Germany is writing about, in his book Being in Time, he's writing about angst, a kind of existential dread that the whole universe is absurd. It has no logical or moral structure to it. And, after living through World War I and eventually World War II, existentialism really celebrates the meaninglessness of the world intrinsically. And basically, Lovecraft has grasped this in the 20s and is expressing the same thing. There's a kind of absurdity after Darwin, where things are not made for the benefit of the individual or the happiness of human beings, but it's really just a terrible, wasteful, process of too many things are born than can survive, and natural selection wipes them out. And what Lovecraft is doing is saying, well, we're not the center of the universe or the highest peak, the zenith of creation. We're just a insect-like species, like everything else, trying to survive. So in the image that I've drawn here, I'm trying to convey the smallness of human beings and the vastness of untold horror that we only glimpse. And so there's a tendency to give it a kind of a spooky, eerie, uncanny quality. And so this is an angst-ridden horror. It's not that you're afraid of a specific thing, although here in a drawing I have to draw a specific thing. It's more like the sense of creepiness that pervades the whole universe. And that's the kind of thing that, that H.P. Lovecraft is famous for. Now, his own writings are sort of infiltrated by some lamentable racism and other sort of features of his own time and place, but there's been some wonderful sort of recapitulations of his stories and his ideas, a kind of attempt to reappropriate and in a way rehabilitate Lovecraft. So, for example, HBO has released Lovecraft Country, which is a horror drama television series based on a novel of the same name. And so there's some wonderful examples of contemporary films and TV shows that really do celebrate the Lovecraftian vision. All right, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you'll come back for more Monsterology episodes. Please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.